Hello knitters, just a quick check-in today to see how everybody's doing with their ribbing for the hat pattern that we've started. The link to the hat pattern that we're using, the Super Simple Hat by Louise Patterson of Wildflower Wool, the link is in the drop-down box below, and we'd love to have you join us. So yesterday we learned how to join in the round, and we talked about gauge, and then I briefly explained how to start the pattern design for the ribbing of the hat. Now I just wanted to check in because if you've never done ribbing before, I wanted to show you a little bit close up what it looks like. There are lots of, well, not lots, I mean there's only a few, but the way we do ribbing can depend on personal preference. So the ribbing for this hat is a 2x2 rib. So 2 times 2 is what you may see it described as. And it's knit 2, purl 2. And if I stretch it out, you can see what it looks like. And I'm sure you've all worn garments that had ribbing at either the bottom of the sweater or at the cuff or the neck that looks like this. That's what ribbing is. So if I'm looking at the front of my work, these are my knit stitches, these are my purl. So knit, purl, knit, purl. And working in the round, it's very easy to see what goes where. We knit into a knit stitch and we purl into a purl stitch. And that's how you work your way around and around and around to get your ribbing. 2x2 is a nice stretchy rib. If you like an even stretchier rib, you could try a 1x1 rib. So 1 knit, 1 purl all the way around. A slightly less stretchy ribbing would be a 3x3. So 3 knit, 3 purl. So for this pattern we're using a 2x2. So the only other thing that I wanted to talk about today, actually no, I'm fibbing, 2 things. I had a question yesterday about stitch markers. Someone asked, and I'm very sorry, at the tip of my tongue, I do not have your name, but I thought it was a great question. She asked what my favorite kind of stitch marker was because the choice was a little bit overwhelming when she was looking into what to purchase. So there are 2 different kinds. I did talk about it a little bit yesterday, locking and not non-locking. These little light bulb ones are my favorite. They're inexpensive, and you can use them for both a locking or a non-locking stitch marker. So they're cheap and they work for both purposes. They're very utilitarian, easy to find, and you know, that's probably why they're my favorite. And they work really well. They're nice and thin. They don't really bother your work while you're stitching. I usually get 1 or 2 in there's a needle brand called Haya Haya, and they usually include one of these light bulb stitch markers, light bulb locking stitch markers in their package. The other kind of stitch marker does not have that open top. This is just a fancy one that a friend sent me a set of. You can buy lots of these kinds. People make them and sell them, and they're wonderful, and they're like jewelry for your knitting. These are just special little treat ones. They do not clip on. You simply use these ones on your needle. There are also little tiny just circles that are also perfectly usable, but again, they're not locking. You can't open them up and actually clip them onto a stitch. So I'll just show you what I do when you want to lock one into place. So I know that the beginning of my round is where I have my stitch marker here. So that I'm using it as a non-locking stitch marker. When I get further on into the pattern and it comes time for the decreases, you want to mark your stitch where it is and not have it on the needle. So you simply put it on a stitch and then it's locked in place. And that marks your very first stitch of the round. And that's it. Okay, so now the very last thing that I wanted to talk about today. In the pattern, it says if you'd like to do a brim for your hat, you can knit 4 to 5 inches of ribbing. It's really up to you. If you want a 2.5-inch brim, then you're going to knit a 5-inch ribbed section. If you only want a 2-inch brim, and so that's really easy to figure out. Just take your measuring tape. And so what I have here is I have just a little over an inch of knitting. So I have about 1.25 inches of knitting. I'm thinking that I would like a 2-inch brim. So the pattern says that you're supposed to knit 7 inches before you start your decreases. And 2 inches of that is the brim. But if you want a rolled over brim and you're knitting 4 or 5 inches, you're going to add the amount of the part that you want to flip over. So I would like a 2-inch brim. I'm going to add that, and I'm going to actually knit 9 inches of my hat before I start the decreases. Okay? I'm pretty sure that's pretty self-explanatory. It's the one thing that doesn't appear in the pattern that may not be 100% clear. So that's it. I hope that was helpful, and I hope that you're loving knitting your hat. And if you're having any troubles, leave me a comment below, and I'll check in a few days. Take care, guys. Happy knitting.